Welcome back to our course on PSE 15. In this section I'm going to look at one of the search topics that I said we'd come back to when we looked at search and find much earlier on in the course. If you recall the find menu, most of which now you should be able to use, so things like find all version sets, find all stacks, etc. But one thing we haven't looked at is visual searches. And with visual searches, instead of looking for instance, images with a certain keyword or tag or a particular shot date, we look for them by their visual appearance. And there are really three options. I'm going to look at all three of them in this section. First of all, visually similar photos and videos. So that's basically photos which overall look very similar. Secondly, objects appearing in photos, which photos have a particular object in them. We wouldn't normally use that, say, for finding people, because hopefully we'd have the photos tagged with people and do a search on people tags, but to some extent it would work on something like people. And then we can look for duplicate photos as well. Let's start with the first of these, and before I search, what I'm going to do is expand all stacks, so that where a similarity extends to more than one image within a stack, we see all of the individual images. If I go to the View menu, one of the options is Expand All Stacks. Note also that I've only got the image type of photos in view at the moment. So to do a visual search, I go to the Find menu, by Visual Searches, Visually Similar Photos and Videos. The way this works is that I choose a photo and I add it to a sort of bin of photos at the top. Usually I'll just add one photo, but if I wanted to find a photo that had features common to two or more, I could put more than one photo in the bin at the top. I'll demonstrate it with just one photo. I'm going to take one of these Red Wing photos here. That's now added to the top. And when I do that, the images in my catalogue are rated according to how similar they are to that one. What do we mean by similar? Well, we could mean similar by colour, or we could mean similar by shape. And there's a slider over on the right here where we can go from the extreme of colour similarity to the extreme of shape similarity. If I wanted a combination somewhere in the middle, there it is. If you look at that image and look at the percentage similarities, the similarity to itself is 100%. But if you look at some of the other images in the top row, which are very much of the same subject taken at different moments, they generally get rankings in the 80s and high 70s. And some of the pictures in the second row as well get high 80 rankings. As you move further down the catalogue, those ratings decrease. But in some cases where you have a rating in the 60s or the 50s or even the 70s, I'm really quite surprised by how high those ratings are myself. But if you're looking for an extreme level of similarity, so if you're looking for pictures that really are very similar, in my experience you need to look for pictures that are in the ratings of at least 80s, probably 90s to be very similar. I suggest you try to take some time to practice with visual searches, preferably on your own catalogue. If you wanted to add a second or third image to do a composite search, if you click on the plus there and then just click on the image in your catalogue, that will be added. And you can also remove an image from the search bin at the top. If you right click, one of the options is Remove from Search. And just before we leave this visual similarity search, note the option there to save the search criteria as a saved search. When I've finished though, click on Close and the search is closed. Let's now look at an example of searching for an object. I'm going to search for a standing stone. I'm going back to one of the pictures I took at the Ring of Brodgar in Orkney, that one. And on the Find menu, I'm going to select by Visual Searches, Objects Appearing in Photos. I'm then going to move this search box around the standing stone. Obviously I could cancel at any point, but I'm then going to click on Search Object. Note again that I have the option of adding an additional object from an additional picture, but I'm just going to do one at the moment. Click on Search Object, and there are the results of my search. Now at the top, the first 3 images are 3 images that were taken at the Ring of Brodgar. 2 of them are very similar images, and as you can see, they get a 100% match on that object. I get an 86% match on this slightly different picture, but then I get a reasonably high match for part of Glastonbury Abbey, and then a slightly lower match on part of Glastonbury Tor, and so on. In fact, we return to the Ring of Brodgar over here, where we have a different view of the same standing stones, and ultimately we get a 73% match with the back end of a Highland cow, and in fact a 72% match with part of a horse. So as before, some of the high rankings surprised me, but in terms of finding that object itself, I think it can work pretty well. And once again, you have the option to save the search, and when you're finished, just close. The final visual search is one that I think can be very useful if you do a bit of tidying up from time to time, and like most people, you'll probably finish up with pictures that are so similar that you don't really need to keep all of them, although to some extent I must admit I tend to keep all of my images in offline storage just in case. But if I go to the Find menu again and go down to Visual Searches, Duplicate Photos, what happens is that PSE suggests that these may be duplicates. Now, in all of these cases, none of them actually are duplicates, but I might want to look at them very closely just to make sure that they really are different. And right down at the bottom, when I've got through all the suggested potential duplicates, including those Ring of Brodgar ones where 2 of those really do look very similar, if I get right down to the bottom here, as before, I get a section Unique Photos, and these unique photos are the ones where there really doesn't appear to be anything quite like it in the catalogue, so those should be pretty safe. Whereas with the others, it's maybe a good idea to go through them from time to time and just make sure I haven't accidentally imported any images twice. If I find a picture that I'm pretty convinced is a duplicate, or for some other reason I don't want to keep it, having selected it, there's an option down here, Remove from Catalogue, and I can remove it in the usual way with the option of deleting the physical image from the hard disk as well. That's duplicate photos and the end of this section. I'll see you in the next one.